Welcome back to the Simone NBA show. I'm your host, Jack Simone. You can follow me on Twitter at JackSimoneNBA. You can follow Heavy on Twitter at HeavyOnSports, and you can find all of their other links and social handles. That's the word I was looking for on the side of the screen on YouTube, which you should be subscribed to by now. Check out Heavy on YouTube to get this podcast and an array of other great podcasts, as well as some other videos in there on the YouTube channel. But I got a great episode for you all today. I have ThreeCone, Twitter legend, Bleacher Report famous person, YouTuber, friend of mine, on the show today to talk hoops. We talk a little bit of Thunder because he's a Thunder fan. Then we just talk about the general scope of the league, some of the teams that are doing better than some expected. Shout out the Utah Jazz and Lauri Markkanen, the Wizards, the Blazers, teams like that. Then I ask him some quick fire questions, get some thoughts there. We played Pretenders or Contenders early in the episode, and then a game of this or that at the end. So tune around for all that and tune in at the end to see who he chooses to lead a franchise with him. Ask him a few players and see what his thoughts are. And Cone gives his top 5 players in the world today at the end of the show too. So if you're curious about that, make sure to stay tuned. But without further ado is what I meant to say. I am going to throw it over to my chat with ThreeCone. It is my pleasure to welcome ThreeCone on Twitter, 3_Cone, and YouTuber with over 16,000 subscribers now. Thank you for joining me, Cone. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Like we were talking about before the show, I just got back from hooping for a couple hours, so I am completely gassed. I played a couple of 3-on-3s, and then for my last 1-on-1, I finished the first one. I asked the guy if he wanted to play again. He's like, "You sure? You seem kind of gassed." And I was like, "Let's do it. Let's go again." So that was a good time. So I just got back, but been enjoying the basketball season. Like we just talked about, it's been very hectic for the both of us, but it's so good to have basketball back, man. I missed it so much. So it's been a really good season so far. A lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on YouTube, which you should be, check out Heavy on YouTube. You can see at the bottom of the screen there are a bunch of players. It's an interesting group we got, but we'll touch on all of them as we go. But I did want to start with the 3 players on the top of your screen on YouTube because Cone is obviously a Oklahoma City Thunder fan. I got Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Lou Dort on the screen. Shai putting up monster numbers. I saw you tweeted about it earlier. Thunder obviously not going to be the best team in the league. That's not their forte right now, but Shai is putting up the numbers. I think a lot of Thunder fans, want to see from him. Has he been your favorite part of watching OKC this year?
Easily. Yeah, he's been my favorite player since we picked him up in that trade. I'm going to call it the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trade, not the Paul George trade, because I have to. I'm biased. But yeah, it's been so fun to watch him grow and become the player that he is now. In my opinion, he should have been an all-star already. You know, we can get into the whole Mike Conley getting the selection over him, whatever. Mike Conley, great guy. We'll give that one to him, but he's an all-star caliber player. I think right now he's taking a leap to be an all-NBA caliber player. That's something that I truly believe he can be and is becoming. He might not get that nod because team success does play a part in it, which I completely understand. Like, I'm not going to be salty if, a guy who makes like the 4 seed gets it over him, and we're ending up in the lottery again. But he's been incredible. Like, he continues to get better. And we saw a little bit of this at the end of last season, post All-Star break. I think he played like 10 or 13 games, something around that range. And he was averaging over 30 points per game in that stretch, really efficient. He had a slow start to the season, coming back off of plantar fasciitis, which kept him out of the Olympics in the end of the season prior. Or not the Olympics, but the Olympic qualifiers with Team Canada. So it kind of took him some time to work back to where he was. But at the end of last season, he was putting up, like you said, monster numbers, kind of similar to ones he's putting up now. And I was like, this is the Shai I think we're going to get this upcoming season. That's what he's been so far. And he's been electric to watch. It just feels like nobody can stop him. He's knocking down threes, one of the best attackers of the basket in the league. And his mid-range has become incredibly deadly too. It's something that he's really worked on in his game. And I'm a believer that he's a franchise player. He can be the best player on a championship team someday. I've got a lot of flack for that from some people. Other people agree. Regardless, I'm going to keep believing it because I think he can get us there one day. Although, like you said, not necessarily our forte right now in winning games, but someday I think it's possible.
Yeah, and you hear the term garbage time stats or garbage stats thrown around a lot, but I feel like those should be reserved for when a player is scoring on a bad team with inefficient numbers. Right now, Shea's averaging, we're recording on October 26th, by the way, 3 games into the Thunder season. He's averaging 31 points on 49% from the field and 38.5% from three. Like, it's not like he's just chucking up a bunch of shots that aren't going in, but his averages are going up. He's playing 36 minutes a night, taking 23 shots a game, and shooting extremely efficiently. Like, I understand the thought process of, oh, he's on a bad team, he's going to get the most shots. But if he's shooting this efficiently, there has to be a correlation to winning in there somewhere. He just needs the teammates and averaging 4.7 rebounds, 6.7 assists on a Thunder team who doesn't exactly have a ton of shot makers around him to make those assists count. So, yeah. So outside of Shea, I did want to ask you this as well. Who has been your favorite player to watch? And I have a sneaking suspicion who it is, but if not, I'll talk about the guy I'm thinking of after. But who's your second favorite right now in OKC?
It's been Josh Giddey up to this point.
Okay.
A really fun player to watch. A lot of people were shocked. I was shocked too when we took him 6 overall. We had heard some whispers, but it kind of seemed like it was going to be like a James Book night or maybe Jonathan Kuminga. I heard some Franz Wagner in there too. But Josh Giddey was a surprise when we took him, but it was clear what the vision was with him. Shea in the season prior had to do basically everything to handle the ball. He was like the sole playmaker on the team. So bringing in a guy like Giddey, who ended up hurting his ankle a couple games ago. He hasn't played in a little bit. He's out for this upcoming game against the Clippers too, but fingers crossed he's able to come back soon. But he's been so fun to watch both last season and through the preseason and the start of this year, just being a couple games. His playmaking is incredible. He makes some passes I couldn't even dream of making. Like, watching the game as a fan, I'm seeing like a bird's eye view of everything, and I still don't know how he sees some of the passes that he makes. His shot looks improved too. He's taking more diverse looks. He's knocking down some middies. His 3-point shot still doesn't look great, but it's been a lot more effective through this early going, especially in the preseason. It looked really solid. He shot over like 50% from three, I believe, in the preseason, although it wasn't like massive volume. I think it was like 9 of 14 or something. But he's looked really good so far. Him and Shea, building that chemistry, of course, in the backcourt as kind of the two guys for the future right now, alongside get well soon Chet Holmgren. Heartbreaking that he's not playing this year. Every time I watch this team, I think how good we'd look with Chet. But it's fine. Him and whoever we draft next year can compete for Rookie of the Year alongside each other. It'll be fun. So really excited with Shea and Giddey as our backcourt. Been really, really fun to watch them grow and develop that chemistry together. It feels like it's getting better and better. Both of them learning to play off ball with each other. And I fully believe they're going to be one of the best backcourts in the league in a few seasons.
Yeah, they've been great. The chemistry is definitely building, like you said, and maybe the Thunder win the lottery and get Wembanyama. You never know. That'd be lethal. Him and Chet in the front court.
Oh my God. If we got Chet, Victor, Shea, Giddey, Dort, Tramp, man, I would. I don't know what I did to deserve that actually, I know what I did. I've sat through years of heartbreak as a Thunder fan. I can go into a lot of moments. Dame shot, 3-1 lead being blown, which my friends never let me forget till this day.
Of course.
So yeah, I've been through a good bit, getting Victor would only feel right. So yeah, it would be incredibly fun to watch.
Of course, and you did mention the last player I did want to bring up while we're talking about the Thunder. Tre Mann's averaging 15 points this season. It's not the most efficient 15 points, but he does look like a guy that could be one of those top level, at least 6 men for OKC behind Shea and Giddey. What have you seen from Tre Mann this season that you're liking so far?
Yeah, the big thing I really like so far from him this season is his finishing around the rim. That was a pretty big problem last year. He would get there, but there's a lot of times where he was kind of having trouble driving through contact. But he said he worked a lot on strength and conditioning heading into the offseason, and he was great. Yesterday, he had 25 points against the Clippers in a win. The big issue is his 3-point shot hasn't been falling, but to be honest, I'm not super worried about that. He shot I think 38-ish% from three last year. It was pretty solid up in the higher 30s. So I'm not super worried. I think the threes will come back and start falling, but seeing that improvement, especially around the rim, a lot of tough finishes through contact, floaters, mid-range pull-ups. He's got one of the best space creating step backs in the entire league. If once those shots start falling, which I believe they will, like you said, he's going to be such a luxury to have on this team. Having Shea, Giddey, and Tre as 3 guards, it's just incredible that we were able to get him. A pick that I was a huge fan of when we took him, and he's only proved me right in that regard.
Yeah, it's not an exact comparison, but it feels like this is like the natural takeover from that one season you had of CP3, Shea, and Dennis Schroeder off the bench. It's kind of like now Giddey, Shea still, and Tre Mann, which, I mean, phenomenal trio for the future for the Thunder, especially if you get like a Wembanyama, or maybe they just take Scoot Henderson and run 4 guards in the backcourt.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's go crazy.
4-guard lineup. But moving on from the Thunder, I wanted to play a quick game of contender or pretender with you. We're early in the season, a few games in. I want to name some of these teams that are maybe overperforming based on the expectations that were set for them. And when I say contender, I don't mean championship contender. I mean, maybe this team can push for the playoffs and be better than a lot of people expected, or maybe they're just overperforming at the start of the season. So I'll start in the Eastern Conference. Right now, the Washington Wizards are 3-1. And if you're on YouTube, you see Kyle Kuzma at the bottom of the screen. That's because he's their leading scorer right now. Kyle Kuzma is leading the Wizards in scoring. They look good whenever you tune in. They look solid. The Porzingis pairing is working out pretty well. Washington Wizards right now, contenders or pretenders?
I think a little bit of pretender. I worry about. I like what they're doing. I like Kuzma a lot. I think last year he flew under the radar in a big way. A lot better than people gave him credit for. I feel like in LA, just being like, he was a big scapegoat for a lot of people. They were like, oh, it's Kuzma's fault, whatever. So it's cool to see him now in Washington, where he's kind of proving how good he can be. I still have a lot of worries about them, though. I know last year they started on fire and then completely crumbled later in the season. So that's why I'm a bit wary, because when they were doing great last year, I was like, oh my gosh, this might be like a legit playoff team. And then they completely crumbled before my eyes. So I'm a little bit hesitant. I still think they're going to need more out of Bradley Beal, who hasn't been great up to this point. But I have been impressed with what they've done so far. So maybe I'm wrong, but I still see them as kind of one of those teams that I think by the end of the season, they'll be on the outside looking in, maybe as like a 9 or a 10 in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I picked them to be the 10 seed at the start of the year. So I can agree with you there. I think there's definitely less room for improvement and more room for them to fall off as the season goes on, which unfortunate for Washington fans since Beal has that no trade clause, but I digress. We'll move on from that. Right now, the Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo Ball are 2-1. Obviously, it's a very early record, 3 games in, but they had a good start to the season. They still have some pieces there. Contenders or pretenders? Where do you see them finishing the year?
I think I had them as my 14th seed in the East. I think they're big pretenders right now. I don't think it's sustainable. They don't have a lot of like. The big issue is, of course, they had Miles Bridges, who was their leading scorer last season, and due to circumstances that are way out of the Hornets' control, he is no longer with the team. So they need people to step up, and guys have stepped up so far. But I have a suspicion that we might see some guys get dealt. I feel like the Hornets have to realize, in my opinion, it's by far in their best effort to tank this season. If you can get Victor to pair with LaMelo Ball, that is such an incredible duo for your future going forward, or just even any of those top guys, a Scoot and Amin Thompson, Cam Whitmore, whoever you want to get in that draft. If you can pair someone with LaMelo Ball, because right now they just do not have enough talent alongside him. I still can't believe Plumlee is somehow their center. I don't know how he continues to stay as the starter on that team. Mark Williams is getting DNPs, which I don't like. You should be developing him.
The Steve Clifford effect, man. You had to know it was coming.
Oh, when that signing went down, like Kenny Atkinson, I was like, bam, I love that hire.
Right?
I think that's great for them. We saw what he did with the Brooklyn Nets. That young team turned them into a playoff team. Then they just brought back Steve Clifford, who wasn't great with them in the first place, and he got fired by the Magic. So I don't know why you bring him back now. I just don't get it. I think they're trying to do too much. Maybe Michael Jordan wants to win, which shouldn't be their goal. And I think they're going to end up falling a lot in the standings. Even, they're playing well without LaMelo Ball. They deserve credit for that. But like you said, it's very early. And I think by the end of the season, they're going to be towards the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, I had them around 13, 14 too. They're kind of like the Kings of the East. Right now, they're trying a little bit too hard at the exact wrong time. I tweeted out before the season started, the Kings would be the one team to choose to start trying when Wembanyama is in the draft class, right? Like they've tanked for so many years, and then they push all their chips in right before Scoot and Wembanyama come in. Just brutal. Unlucky. Well, I would say unlucky, but it's kind of their own choice, so maybe not.
They're also 0-3, so maybe they just naturally get them.
Hopefully. For the sake of Sacramento fans, I hope so.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, I got the Portland Trailblazers. Shout out Spencer, Enjoy Basketball writer, my source of Trailblazers news on Twitter. 4-0 right now to start the season. Damian Lillard looks amazing coming off his injury last year. Contenders or pretenders?
I was lower on the Blazers than most people heading into things. I think I had them as the 10 seed heading into the season. They've really impressed me, especially I knew Dame was going to be Damian Lillard, but I didn't know the extent to which we'd see him come back right away, especially. And, there's always that small piece of you like, oh, what if Dame's never the same again? He looks like one of the best versions of himself right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Simons has been great. I'm a lot higher on them than I was heading into the season. I'm going to say that they're a playoff contender. I think that, there still is a pretty decent chance they end up in that play-in tournament spot, maybe as like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, because the Western Conference is just so deep. But it's been impressive what I've seen from them. I like how they're utilizing Anthony Simon. Their defense is the big thing. That's been better than I thought it would be. Nurkic, I'm not super big on Nurkic. I was a few years ago, and then he completely fell off a cliff. And now I still feel like they need a bit more rim protection, but he's been good so far, or at least serviceable. He needs to make some more layups because it feels like he misses 5 of those a game. But when you have Dame, anything is possible. I like what Jeremy Grant's brought to the table. I think I started saying I like how they've been utilizing Anthony Simons, having him run a lot of the same actions that Dame does, which kind of creates a lot more difficulty because now that Dame's off the court, if Simons is still out there, you still have to be ready for a guy. He just had that 22-point quarter the other night. Just an incredible player. I'm higher on them than I was before. I'm going to go contender. Not championship contender, but playoff contender. Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, I think I had them around 9 as well. One spot above the Lakers, which we'll talk about later. But Portland's got a lot of guys. Nasir Little's playing well. Rookie Shaedon Sharpe looks amazing to start the season. And I think the additions from last year of Josh Hart and then this offseason Jeremy Grant kind of flew under the radar. Like you said, the defense has been impressive. And I think those two really slot in nicely. I know before the season, I was really high on Josh Hart, saying that he could win most improved. And it's not looking like that right now. But I think his impact in Portland's a lot bigger than a lot of people anticipated it being. The biggest storyline, I would say, to start the season, the Utah Jazz are 3-1.
Yeah, that's happening.
You see Lauri Markkanen at the bottom of your screen if you're on YouTube. I hesitate to even say it because it sounds ridiculous, but contenders or pretenders for Utah right now, Cone?
Pretenders. Although I love what they've done, especially Lauri Markkanen. I was doing one of the Enjoy Basketball Twitter Spaces a few weeks ago, and I can't remember who it was because they deserve a ton of credit. I want to say maybe it was Alex, who's like a regular of the Spaces. I believe he's a Pacers fan. I think it was him who was saying, we were talking about awards, and he brought up Lauri Markkanen, and he said, I love the position he's in with Utah. He was good with Chicago. He was even better or he was kind of a mixed bag with Chicago, but when he got to Cleveland especially, he looked a little bit better. And then coming into the series, got a lot more free reign. And he said, I could see him as a most improved player and maybe even like a borderline all-star guy. And I was like, how did I not think of this before? Because it seemed so obvious. Like when he said it, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then lo and behold, coming into the season, he looks like that player. He right now, if I had to pick a most improved player, it's probably him or Shea. I'm biased, so I'm going to go Shea. But he's just looked really good. I still think they're going to blow up a lot of this team. I think by the end of or by the deadline, I think Conley will be gone. So many teams are going to be calling about Jordan Clarkson too. I'm sure he's going to end up on a contender. I know a name I've heard a lot is like the Bucks. He would be incredible on that team. So I think both of those guys will end up being gone. Maybe like a Malik Beasley's gone. But all in all, they've been a lot more competitive than I thought. And they've been beating good teams too. Like they beat the Timberwolves, the Nuggets. I can't remember the third team they beat.
I'll look at it right now because it definitely was another good team. They beat the Pelicans. OT.
Yeah, the three teams that I thought would be like upper echelon Western Conference teams. I had the Nuggets as my 1 seed. I thought the Timberwolves could push for a top seed. The Pelicans had the chance to take a lead. And then lo and behold, it's the Utah Jazz who are knocking off all these squads.
And then they lost the Rockets.
Exactly. So you can never tell with Utah, but I really like what I've seen from them so far. Unfortunately, I think by the end of the season, Danny Ainge isn't going to just sit there and I'm sure as a Celtics fan, Danny Ainge isn't going to sit there and let this happen.
No shot.
Yeah. So he's going to start shipping guys out probably in about 10 minutes or next time they win a game, guys are going to be flying out the door. So
by the time this podcast is released, 3 players are going to be traded from the Utah Jazz. Have you ever seen Moneyball, Cone? That's what this Jazz team feels like to me. They just feel like they pick scraps from everywhere. I don't think they'll make the playoffs like that A's team or make a run or anything, but they kind of like pick scraps from everybody and it's kind of working together. And shout out Will Hardy too. As a Celtics guy, absolutely. I know Will Hardy. He's amazing. He's done great things for that Jazz team so far. And Kelly Olynyk, another name who I think will end up on a contender too, because
The
he looks
ugliest game winner you've ever seen in your
so
entire
bad.
life. Oh
It
my
went in
God.
though, but
Game winner is a game winner, but good Lord,
exactly.
man, make it look a little bit better.
All right, I got two more, but I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to tell you two teams that have been underperforming, and I want you to tell me if they will be as bad as they're shaping out to be. Excuse me, or they'll get back to the sort of contender status that most people expected from them. So I'll start with the Miami Heat, who are 1-3 right now. They look kind of rough, not much offensive initiation outside of Tyler Hero. The defense hasn't been exactly the same. Contenders or pretenders? Like, do you think they'll be towards the bottom of the East? I'm not saying 15th seed, but do you think they'll be in the play-in, or do you think they'll get back up to that top 4? Most people had them.
Man, it's tough. I personally had the Heat as my 6 coming into the season.
Okay.
I was low on them because I hated their offseason. Losing
Yep.
PJ Tucker is big. They did
Doing
nothing to
nothing.
fill that hole. They just sat there. Like, they let him go to one of their
Nothing
rivals
else.
in the Sixers and then brought in literally nobody. They made no moves. I don't think
Yep.
they signed like a single free agent other than bringing
No.
back their own guys. I
Yep.
know they've been rumored to be in like Jay Crowder trade talks, which he could make a bit of a difference. But even
Mhm.
still, I just feel like they're kind of falling behind at this point. It feels like they're kind of out of it. You know, I was hoping we would see more from Bam Adebayo. He's been solid so
Yep.
far, but I still want him to be. He said before the season he was going to try and take like 18 shots a game. I don't know how much that's really happened this season. I don't know if it has.
Let's
I
take
think
a look.
maybe that first game, because I feel like he kind of was aggressive in one of their early games.
He's averaging 11.5 shots a game, which is just one
Yeah,
more shot than Max Strus. So
man,
there you
it's
go.
like, I feel like he is the key to this team, like, unlocking themselves, and it just feels
Yep.
like it never happens. I don't know if it's a scheme thing, if it's just him not being aggressive, but he said before the season he wanted to take 18 shots a game, and I was looking at some stats prior to the year, and I think I tweeted this out, but Bam Adebayo in like games where he's average like shoots 18 or more times, he's averaging like 25 points on like good efficiency. Like, he
Yeah.
feels like he could be so much better, but he just doesn't really go for that. They've got that huge hole at power forward. You know, they've been running Caleb Martin out there. He's like what, like 6'5". Jimmy
Mhm.
Butler doesn't have the height to keep up with that either. Tyler Hero is not much of a defender. Kyle Lowry is looking like a huge bust of a signing from a couple years ago. I still think they make the playoffs because they're an Eric Spoelstra coach team. They have Jimmy Butler, who's really good. They've got some good pieces, but I was low on them coming into the season. I think I'm even lower on them now.
Yeah, I think they're one of the teams who needs to call the Utah Jazz and say, "Hey, Kelly Olynyk, can we have him back to put next to
Yeah.
Bam Adebayo? Just call anybody, make a move." They look rough to say the least so far. I think I had him
Mhm.
as my 4 seed, but right now
Mhm.
it's looking like they're probably going to be a little bit lower than that. So we'll see what happens there. And the last team I did want to talk about, and it's a nice transition because I wanted to go more in depth on this team. Not exactly the highest expectations coming into the year, but right now the Los Angeles Lakers are in shambles to say the least. They're 0-3.
Yeah,
Tied with the Kings at the bottom of the Western Conference.
man,
They
poor
look
Kings.
rough. Yeah, poor Kings. Lakers look rough. The offense is
Mhm.
just completely awful. The defense is there a little bit. You'll give them some credit on that end, but
Yeah.
contenders or pretenders? Where are the Lakers finishing this year?
If they stay like this, they're not going to make the playoffs. If they make a trade, I truly believe there is a lot of potential to be unlocked on this team.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to become contenders or anything because they still lack like all shooting. I've been preaching for a while. The Russell Westbrook for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner trade, in my opinion, is a no-brainer in my eyes. They've looked great defensively. Like, Darvin Ham came in and said, we're going to be a good defensive team. They've been exactly that. Like, they've been, I
Yeah.
believe, a top 3, maybe even like a top 1 defense up to this point. They've been really locked in on that end. Even
Second
Russell
best
West.
defense.
Yeah.
Second best
So
defense, you're right.
if they could just knock down threes at a non-historically terrible margin, they could be like 2-1 right now. And there's a stat that I keep mentioning to people because it blows my mind. Through these first 3 games, they're shooting about 21.2% from 3, which is the second worst shooting stretch in NBA history amongst, I think it's 6,100 teams that have shot 100 or more threes in a 3-game stretch. It's the second worst in history, only behind the 2018 Hawks, who shot like 2.2% worse, and they went 24 and 58.
Yikes.
It is horrific. I don't know. It's like the hardest thing to watch. It's like watching a train wreck that you can't look away from when they're on the offensive end, because the threes, they're just, and when a 3 goes down, the whole crowd cheers like they just watched like the dunk contest or something. It's insane. I don't know how they managed to take 3 players who excel when surrounded by shooters, and AD, LeBron, and Russ, and give them not a single shooter. I don't think they're going to shoot 21% all year, but I think if they make a trade with Russ and some picks, they could be decent if they brought in some shooting. I just feel like, Rob Pelinka, I think, said they're going to wait till Thanksgiving or give it like 20 games. By that point, it's going to be too late.
I agree. It's like every time the Lakers make it through, Pat Bev celebrates like he won the play-in again. That's kind of what goes down in LA. But
best videos of all time, by the way, the edit with the music in the background, one of the best NBA memes ever.
Top-notch meme. The best meme I think NBA has had since the Kawhi laugh.
That's incredible. That's an incredible one. Absolutely.
League of its own. But the Lakers, you mentioned Rob Pelinka saying they're going to wait till Thanksgiving. I do think it is simultaneously awful for them, but also kind of their only option, because right now there's no teams. It's less the Lakers waiting to find a trade and more them waiting on other teams, I feel like, at this point, because you don't really have options. But if you wait that long, maybe the Pacers win one too many games and that Heel Turner trade comes up that you mentioned. Maybe the Hornets decide to finally blow it up and they can get Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, Kelly Oubre, whoever from there. Maybe the Jazz keep winning for some reason and they can get, a Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk, some sort of deal where they only have to give up one of the first. I feel like as the year goes on, more of these trades will come into play. And you said you like the Healed Turner one best for the Lakers this year?
I think so. A little more shaky on it now because I like what I've seen from AD playing the 5, which is something he should have been doing for years at this point. It's nice to finally see him doing that. But I just love the idea of Healed on this team. I said this on my Bleacher Report live stream the other day that Heald's one of the best 3-point shooters we've ever seen. And people were like mad at me about that. But like statistically, I think the Sixers broadcast was saying this when they played the Pacers. The only 2 players that have made more threes than him, I think, since he got into the league are James Harden and Steph Curry. Like, he has been a complete sniper from deep and he shoots like almost 40%. Imagine the looks he'd get with like LeBron and AD out there when he's had pretty solid playmakers in De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, but you give him like LeBron James and, it's you're going to lose a little bit defensively, sure, but they've been, like you said, a top 2 defense up to this point. That's not what they need to be worried about at that point. I like what you mentioned about the Jazz with like the trade options that are there. I know the Spurs could be an option with like a Doug McDermott or a Jakob Poeltl. That he would probably take 2 first-round picks. He's looked phenomenal so far too. Although I know when the whole Kawhi Leonard thing was going on, Greg Popovich refused to send Kawhi Leonard to LA so much that he sent him to another country. So I don't know how willing he'd be to deal with an LA team, but there's options out there. I worry that I think what you said makes sense. The fact that they're going to have to mainly wait for other teams to see how they are kind of shaking out. If they're going to make a deal in terms of trying to find success, it should be as soon as possible. Whenever a team's like, hey, we're interested in this deal, and they should be calling up almost every day, like, hey, what do you think now? Like, what do you think now? Because as much as I love Russ, he's my favorite player of all time. It's not working there. I think it would be better for both sides at this point if there's a split.
I said this on last week's episode of SNS. I think there's one team that Westbrook needs to go to where he could be the same Westbrook he was, and I think it's the Wizards. I think if you put him on that Wizards team next to Beal and Kristaps, the last place you saw him have that real success, there's just not as much of a need for a ball-dominant point guard in the league nowadays, but having him next to 2 guys that don't really have a point guard, I think would be his best option, because I do think he can play at that level. This is just quite literally the worst possible situation he could ever be put in to play basketball. It's kind of impressive how poorly they managed this. Can you believe Rob Pelinka got an extension?
I was literally just about to say that. I was thinking that in my head. I don't know how he got an extension this offseason. I don't know. It blows my mind. I don't know. The Lakers are doing their own thing over there. I don't know how they went from, like, I made a whole YouTube video about it, but how they went from this championship team and the next year they dealt with a ton of injuries, but it looked like if they stayed healthy, they could have taken out the Suns potentially. So then they completely overreacted, dealt basically everyone and panicked. They even had a Buddy Hield trade there available for them. They could have traded for Hield a year ago from the Kings. And it was like, we thought it was a done deal because I think it was Woj or Shams. I think it was Shams first tweeted the Hield deal on draft day. And we're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. And then out of nowhere, Woj says, actually, it's Russell Westbrook. And I, of course, way overdoing my bias. And I was like, oh my God, like Russell Westbrook, my favorite player of all time, next to LeBron James, one of my other favorite players of all time. was like, oh my God, they're going to win a ring. Like, imagine a finals between them and the Nets, all the storylines. And then, yeah, you saw how that went on both sides of things. So Lakers not making the playoffs, Nets getting swept by your Celtics. So
Yep.
then go
I
up.
enjoyed that series, but no, I was really high on the Lakers too. I had them as the 1 seed. I mean, I figured they would do what they said they would do and figure it out, but they just never did, and they still haven't.
No.
So,
That
Lakers.
LeBron tweet about like keep the same energy when everyone was calling them old that he deleted later. Yeah.
Amazing. And then he had to tweet out an apology like months later because they were so bad. Just all-time stuff. All-time
Man.
stuff. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the Wembanyama sweepstakes because at the start of the season, you name these teams. Pacers are going to be tanking. The Jazz, all these teams are going to be there. And now some of these squads are looking a little bit better than you expected. The Pacers are 1-2 right now, but they don't look bad. Benedict Mathurin looks good. Tyrese Halliburton looks
crazy.
good. Right, Mathurin's insane. And then you look at the Jazz. Obviously, they have all these pieces. You have to assume they'll get rid of some, but I can't imagine they'll get rid of Markkanen, who looks like he could win them some games on his own. And then the Magic have Ben Caro. The Pistons have Cade and Ivy, who look phenomenal so far this year. All of these bad teams look like they're probably going to be better than most people anticipated. And the teams that are winless right now are the Lakers and the Kings, who are actively trying to win. So what teams do you think will truly be in that Wembanyama sweepstakes by the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Magic they've started kind of rough, but I think they're better than their record indicates. They're dealing with some injuries. So I still think they'll be kind of in that sweepstakes, but I think they're going to be better than, the 0-4 start that they have.
Yep.
I think the Rockets are a prime contender to be in that sweepstakes. Jabari Smith hasn't been great offensively so far, but I think a lot of that has to do with the Rockets not really having like a super high level playmaker. Kevin Porter Jr. Credit, he's been pretty good so far. But I like imagining, even if they don't get Victor, like a Scoot Henderson on the Rockets, that's one of my favorite fits for him. I would love him there. I still think the Pacers, because I do think the Pacers are going to end up trading Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, like some of those guys eventually, although they haven't had Hield up to this point. But then again, like we were talking about, they've got Tyrese Halliburton and Benedict Mathurin, who they've both been on fire. Mathurin, I believe,
crazy.
Another stat I saw on the Sixers broadcast, he was like top like 7 or 8 all time in like points scored in a rookie's first like 3 games.
It's crazy.
It's absurd. He's been incredible. Super fun to watch him out there. My Thunder, I think we're a bit better than people give us credit for. We still, I think, will be in the lottery. I don't think we're going to make the play-in or anything, but I still think, we might be like a 12 seed or something in the Western Conference, a bit better than people anticipated. So it's tough to really tell because the NBA feels more competitive than ever. And I think that's part of why we're seeing some of these results, like the Jazz winning all these games. The Spurs, Devin Vassell has been a monster, another most improved player guy. He looks incredible so far. But like, all of these like kind of meh teams in most people's eyes are putting up way better fights than people expected to. And I think that is a product of how talented the league is at this point, that even like teams that are quote unquote tanking, which a lot are, they're still trying to. And I think by like the midway point of the season, I think we could see a fire sale for a lot of these teams because teams are going to be like, we're not going to make it. Let's go get Victor. So I think, you've got Adam Silver out there begging teams on live TV, please don't tank. I'm talking about relegation, which would never happen. Trying to make threats and stuff like that. It's not going to happen. But that shows how good he is. And I think we will see some absolutely egregious tanking towards the end of the season. But for right now, it's been pretty competitive.
Yeah, and I think you'll see most of these teams, like you said, probably sell some guys off to these big-time contenders. And I think you could see on the flip side, some of those contenders get some real quality pieces in to help them with the final stretch. For the last 10 or so minutes I have you here, I did want to play another game. I have a game of this or that. I have a few questions to ask you, and I just want a quick fire response. We can talk about the answer after, but I want you to answer as quickly as possible. Have you ever seen the TikTok where he goes, do you prefer triangle or square pizza? And then he says square pizza, and then he goes, I didn't even know that about myself. I want that. I want that sort of quickness. So this first one, I'm going to give you 3 options. So you can wait till I say the options, and then you can answer. Some of them won't have options, but for this one, it does. Who would you rather start your franchise with? I have 3 players. Jason Tatum, Ja Morant, or Zion Williamson?
Jason Tatum.
Okay. All right, let's break that down then. So I assume the Zion is because of the injuries, but I'd like to know where you're at when you pick Jason Tatum out of those 3.
Yeah, Zion, a little bit of injury concerns. I think he's a complete monster, but I think it's a bit maybe more difficult to build a team around him than a guy like
Mhm.
Jason Tatum. And then I really like John Morant, but also how high flying he is. It also worries me a bit with the injuries. I
Yeah.
knock on wood, pray he stays healthy, but it does concern me a bit. And in my opinion, Jason Tatum for me has been a player that earlier on in his career, I think like year 2 or year 3, I thought he was going to be like an all-star caliber guy. I didn't know if he was ever going to
Mhm.
get to that all NBA tier. And thankfully, he proved me completely wrong and like an idiot because he has been phenomenal. He's now one of my favorite players to watch in the league. I think he's
Yep.
going to win an MVP someday. I think he's top 10 in the
Mhm.
league. I don't think either of those other two players are at this point, but I do think Jason Tatum is. He just led a team to the final. So I've seen it from Jason Tatum. The fact that he's 24 years old and he's been to
Yep.
a couple of conference finals, he's been to an NBA finals already, all NBA type player. He looks like a potential MVP this year. Give me Jason Tatum.
Okay. I'm gonna lump Tatum into the next category. I'm gonna give you three more players. Same question. Who would you rather build your franchise around?
Okay.
Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Giannis
Okay.
for
That's what I
sure.
expected, but
Yeah.
I wanted to ask it. So what's your reasoning there?
It's just, Giannis, what he's done already at this level. I think he's by
Mhm.
far the best player in the league right now. I think he's got a pretty strong grip on that title. Defensively, offensively, he just continues to get better. Won a finals MVP. He's proven to be a guy that can lead you to a championship. I think Tatum will do that someday, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think Luka will too. He's one of the most special talents we've ever seen in this league. Still cannot believe that going back to the Kings because we have to keep bringing up for Kings fans for some reason. I keep going at them, but the fact that they picked Marvin Bagley over Luka, I feel like is going to go down as one of the worst draft day decisions of all time. But yeah,
Mhm.
Luka is incredible. He does have a really ball dominant style of play, which we haven't seen translate into championships super often, which is a little bit concerning. But I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in all three of those guys. It's just, in my opinion, Giannis is the best in the league.
Can't really argue that. Giannis is Giannis. It is what it is. Can you believe that Luka went third in his own draft? But like,
I it blows my mind that I actually tweeted like just that out yesterday
I
because
think that's where I saw it.
I
I
was
think I saw
watching
your
him and I
tweet.
was like, I can't believe this because DeAndre Ayton, I guess I get it. He's been good. He
The
just got
Phoenix
his bag with
connection.
Phoenix.
Yep.
Yeah, he went to Arizona. They needed a center. I kind of get it. I still think it was a mistake, but I do
Yeah.
get it a little bit more. But God, the Marvin Bagley pick was horrific. I remember I was someone who believed, I was a big Luka believer. I was like, he should go first overall.
Yeah.
Watching him play, I was like, he should be the guy. And he ends up going third. But even then, like the Hawks drafted him, but then traded him for Trae Young, which is a little bit better because Trae Young's still really good. But like it's Luka Doncic.
I know.
I can't believe that. And then the poor Grizzlies who don't get in on that trade, and now they're just stuck here in the 4 spot. And they got Triple J, who's good. That whole draft
Yep.
class, really, 2018, completely
Mhm.
stacked. But yeah, if I was the Grizzlies, I'd be real salty. Like y'all couldn't have just taken like someone else and then let us have Luka. So yeah.
Yeah. Brutal for the Kings, especially who keep getting picked on today. But I mean, come on, yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
just
got to
feel
happen.
bad. I want to see the Kings have success so bad. I've
Mhm.
been rooting for them so hard this season, and then they're 0-3. I refuse to let them keep tricking me. I keep letting it
Yeah,
happen, but we'll see.
you got to let the belief die at some point. It's been
Yeah.
16 years of belief, and yikes. All
Yeah.
right, next one. I'll give you a little more time on this one because I'm going to ask you to name multiple players. But you just mentioned you think Giannis is the best in the world. You spoke highly of Luka Doncic. Doesn't have to be in order, but I want your top five in the world right now. Top five basketball players in the world right now. I know it's
Okay.
tough, so I'll give you a little bit more time than I gave you for the other quick fire, but it doesn't have to be in order. Top
Okay.
five players in the world.
Okay. Giannis, of
Mhm.
course. I think Jokic,
Okay.
Joel Embiid,
Okay.
Steph Curry,
Yep.
and I think I'm gonna go Luca. I think those are my
Okay.
five.
Wow. Okay. So the big names, I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, why'd you leave them out? LeBron and Durant didn't get in there.
Yeah, those are the two guys. Every time I think about the top five, I'm
Mhm.
it feels like they should be, but I don't know. Just the fact, like the whole getting swept thing last year for Durant, kind of
Yep.
like makes me feel the wrong way. Not necessarily his fault. Well, actually, yes, it is his fault. But there are a lot of other issues outside of that. I haven't been impressed by the Nets so far either. I think if I had to take, just trying to win a championship, not even building a team around for the future. Right now, I need someone to go like be a championship player for me. I think I'm taking those five guys over him, which also hurts with LeBron because I think if I'm trying to win a championship, I want LeBron. I just, once again, missing the playoffs last season.
It's tough.
I'm probably going to eat my words on that because I've been someone that has for years, up until I think last year, was like, LeBron is still the best in the world. I will not let that die. I just think at this point, guys are ahead of him.
It's tough. There's a lot of great players. I respect that you had both bigs in there because a lot of people leave out Jokic and or Embiid, sometimes both of them, but both, I mean, back to back 1 and 2 for MVP, it's tough. And speaking of that, I want you to tell me who the top 3 players will be in this year's MVP voting. Again, it doesn't have to be in order, but who will finish in the top 3 of MVP voting this season?
Shoot, man.
Asking the tough ones.
Yeah, it's tough. My pick who was my pick before the season? My pick before the season was Joel Embiid. The Sixers have struggled so far, but I still believe they're going to turn it around. So I'm going to say Joel Embiid still finishes in that top 3. I don't know how much love Jokic is going to get because of voter fatigue. I think that it's gonna hurt him a bit. So I think I am going to leave him out. But I'm going to throw in there. It might be dumb to put in 3 Eastern Conference players, but for some reason that's what's coming
exactly
to me right
what
now.
you're saying. Yep. Exactly.
Giannis and Tatum are coming to mind right now. Like the Celtics look really good. I thought they were going to struggle to start the season. They have not done that at all. They've looked like one of the best teams in the league. So I kind of want to go those 3. Other names we could go over, like Steph Curry could kind of be in that conversation. Lauri Markkanen, I guess, is trying to make his name. It feels weird to put 3 East players, but I'm going to go with those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're all playing at a very elite level. Obviously, Embiid's struggling a bit, but you have to imagine he'll get it back. And they look like the teams that should be finishing at least at the top of the East. All right, last question I got for you. It's sort of not a curveball, but a different style of question.
Okay.
Less pressure to name the quote-unquote correct people by most people's standards. So 3 years ago, the Miami Heat made this surprise run to the finals. No one really expected them. 2 years ago, it was the Hawks who got to the Western Conference Finals. And last year, you could kind of say the Mavs weren't expected to go that far. Who is the team this year that is going to make that shocking run to the Western Conference or Eastern Conference Finals that most people aren't expecting to get that far?
I've got 2, and I've got 1 in each conference.
Gotcha.
West, the New Orleans Pelicans. There
you go.
Big believer in this team. Big believer in Zion. Their depth was shown last night. Trey Murphy went out. I went to UVA, so rooting for him really hard. Big fan of his game. He's a lot better than people give him credit for. A lot of people see him as just a 3-and-D guy, but he's more than that too.
Yeah.
They've got CJ McCollum, who's him being your 3rd option is crazy. Valanciunas is there too. They're just so talented. Their defense has looked better than people thought it would up to this point. Role players like Jose Alvarado, Larry Nance Jr. I mentioned Trey Murphy III, Dyson Daniels. They're just a really, really solid squad. I think if guys stay healthy, because that is always a concern. Zion and Ingram both missed last game, although it was kind of weird freak stuff. It wasn't like a major injury or anything. So I think Ingram's was like a concussion or something, and I don't expect him to keep getting concussed.
I hope not.
That would be like the computer over. But yeah, so I think the Pelicans are a team that could do that. And then the East, I've got the Cavaliers. I was a big believer in them heading into the season. I think I had them as like the 3 seed in the East.
Wow.
I'm a big believer. What they're doing right now, like they're playing really great basketball, even without Darius Garland. Donovan Mitchell's been on another level. And this is like Evan Mobley hasn't even been that good so far this season. He's not super involved offensively, which I think they'll kind of work that out. They're still figuring out the hierarchy, but those 2 bigs, I love what they have there. I'm a believer that Evan Mobley can be the best player in that team someday. I think he has legit superstar potential. He was my favorite player in last year's draft class heading into it. So when the Thunder had that coin flip with the Cavaliers to decide who would get higher odds, and we won, I was psyched. And then because they lost the coin flip, they ended up getting Evan Mobley. I was much less hype.
Brutal.
Still love Josh Giddey and everything, but
of course,
Evan Mobley, huge believer in his game. Darius Garland is great. They've got a lot of depth too. I am a huge believer in them. Either of those teams, there's a chance that they could go out. Like the NBA is so deep. I think this is the deepest it's ever been. Like making my predictions. 100%. I did a prediction stream with Bleacher Report, and I don't think I've ever seen a group of people more angry at one person in my entire life than that chat was. They did not like it, and I don't blame them because it's hard to predict like this season. It feels like there was so much that could happen. The Jazz are 3-1. Like it is absurd what we're seeing right now. So it's really tough. But if I had to pick 2 teams that I think could shock the world and make that run, I think I'd go with them.
Yeah. No, those are good picks. I think I had the Cavs around 6 just because, like you said, there's just so many talented teams
Oh, for
in the
sure. Yeah.
NBA this year. You look down the league and you could argue that 11 or 12 teams in each conference are genuinely trying to make the playoffs, and at least 2 of them are not even going to make the play-in, let alone the playoffs. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a fun season of basketball, and that's not even including, like you said, the Jazz and the teams like the Spurs, who probably shouldn't be winning like they are. But
hmm
that's all I got for you today. I appreciate you taking the time to join me.
hmm
Do you want to let everybody know where they can find your stuff? Just because every time I start to say guest stuff, I butcher it, and I don't want to do that today.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, 3_cone on Twitter. Because I can't get it without the underscore. The account that has it without the underscore has retweeted one thing since 2016, and it was in
Love it.
2020. So,
Amazing.
love that for me. And then on YouTube, it's just 3Cone, no underscores. I do a lot of
Mhm.
video. I do a video basically every single day, kind of recapping the NBA storylines and going mainly in depth on one player, one team that in particular has been standing out, and that's been really fun to do. A lot of cool stuff going on over there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you like Thunder stuff, I do a Thunder podcast, Topic Thunder podcast. I think it's OKC Topic Thunder on Twitter. I believe that's the handle. So go check that out if you like more Thunder stuff. My channel, bit more general NBA things. But yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. Oh, and also go check out at Enjoy B-Ball if
Of
you enjoy
course.
basketball. Jack did some writing for the newsletter that we've got going on over there, which was Jack kills it. But yeah, this has been great, man. Really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun to talk hoops with you. I'll take an excuse to talk basketball whenever I can.
I love it. Thank you for the time, like I said, and hopefully the Thunder will either be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes or in the playoffs. So I'll give you that.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you again to Cone for joining me today. Great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did when I was a part of the conversation. But that'll be it for us today at the Simone NBA show. Like I said, make sure to check out Heavy on YouTube. Subscribe there. You can watch the interview rather than just listen. If you are on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platforms, make sure to follow, leave a rating, all that good stuff. And then over on YouTube, subscribe to Heavy and leave us a like and a comment. Tell us who you would lead your franchise with. Tell us who your top 5 players in the NBA today are. See how they stack up to Cone's answer. But yeah, that'll be it for us today at the Simone NBA show. I'm your host, Jack Simone. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack Simone NBA. You can follow Heavy on Twitter at Heavy on Sports. And we will see you guys next week. Peace out.